I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my tomb till I met you. I was breathing but not alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my tomb till I met you. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. Now your mercy has saved my soul. Now your freedom is all that I know. The old made new. Jesus, when I met you, you called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. I needed rescue, my sin was heavy, but chains break at the weight of your glory. I needed shelter, I was an orphan, now you call me a citizen of heaven. When I was broken, you were my healing, now your love is the air that I am breathing. I have a future, my eyes are open, 'cause when you called my name, I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day. You called my name and I ran out of that grave. Out of the darkness into your glorious day.
Every year on Thanksgiving, we're reminded that gratitude is a decision that we get to make. There are many things that are out of our control. The children won't stop getting older. The headlines keep getting crazier. The Christmas advertisements keep starting earlier and earlier every single year. The world around us is always changing, and there's a lot that we don't get to decide. But gratitude is a decision that we get to make. So let's decide to keep opening our doors. Let's decide to set the table and join hands. Let's decide that no matter what may come, our words to Jesus will always be, thank you.
morning. I would like to welcome you to the Rivers online worship experience. My name is Dean Ward, and I serve as the lead pastor here of the River, and I am so grateful that you have chosen to join in with us here this morning. I wanted to give you a sense of the season that we're entering. Yes, this Sunday is the Sunday before Thanksgiving, but we wanted to get a jump on some of the Christmas decor here at the River 15068. So we got our 12-foot tall Christmas tree, and it didn't fit. So we had to make do and have a little fun with the top of it and make it look a little unique and out of the ordinary because we couldn't get a star on the top. So we couldn't quite get it right, but the Christmas decor is going up in the River 15068, and just wanted to give you a glimpse of that here this morning. Also, you may be a little confused because you're like, wait, Dean, you're preaching in the Steeler jersey, and you say you only wear Steeler jerseys on the Sundays that the Steelers play. Well, actually, the Steelers play today because we're filming on Thursday. And the advantage you have watching this is you actually know what transpired Thursday night, where I am still in the dark. So if you know, don't tell me just yet. Hopefully they had another victory, making 5 in a row. I'm determined not to I'm going to keep wearing, not going to stop wearing, which means I'm going to keep wearing my Troy Polamalu jersey on the Sundays that I preach and on the online days they play that I preach until they lose. So there you go. Well, I'm grateful that we are in our new sermon series, just simply called Count the Stars, a call to trust God. And we're looking at the life of Abram, and I will refer to him as Abram unless I forget and call him Abraham, until next Sunday when we see that God has already changed his name to Abraham. But for the first part of the journey with Abram, he just goes by Abram, and his wife goes by Sarai, not Sarah. And so we are looking at the life of Abram and the call on his life to trust God. And I love this because this invitation to trust God, we get to see Abram's successes and his failures. We get to see his struggle to trust God and when he gets it right. And so today's sermon is going to be a little different because there are two significant components that we want to cover, but they fit together. And so we're going to start today's message looking at Genesis chapter 15, verses 7 through 21. And we saw Genesis 15, verses 1 through 6, where God reassures Abram, last week we looked at this, that he would indeed have an heir, a child of his own, even in his old age, and that through his child, his descendants would outnumber the stars in the sky. He told him to go outside and look at the skies and count the stars, if indeed he could count them. And God's promise to Abram is that his descendants, his heirs, would outnumber all the stars that he could count. So let's pick the story up in verse 7 of Genesis 15. He also said to him, God also said to Abram, I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans. I will give you this land to take possession of it. And then I love this next word, but Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? So if you take this question with what we taught about last week, you'd almost pull your hair out like I already have. It's like, Abram, God's just telling you it's a journey of trust. He's not going to give you all the answers. He's not going to spell it all out for you just like you want. God's got this. This is a call to trust God, and God will do what he says even when we don't understand how or why or what he is up to. But Abram said, Sovereign Lord, how can I know that I will gain possession of it? And I love that the Lord is patient with us in our call to trust him. He's patient. He knows that we want all the answers. He knows that we want it all mapped out. He knows that we are desiring certainty, clarity, and confidence in those steps moving forward. And yet, that's what trust is. It's moving forward, trusting God, even when we don't have clarity, even when we don't have certainty, and even when we don't have the confidence that we so desperately crave. When asked to trust God, God knows life in all its fullness is only available when we trust before certainty, clarity, and confidence are given. We trust in the Lord. We don't trust in certainty, clarity, and confidence. And that's living this call to trust the Lord. Verse 9. So the Lord said to him, God's going to make a promise to Abram, and he's going to do it in such a way that it's called a covenant that the Lord will not break. So it's as though Abram's saying, hey, God, I need your reassurance. And God says, okay, let's go to the notary and notarize it and make it all legal and binding so that you don't have to worry anymore. God is so good and patient with us in his trustfulness and our fears. And so this ceremony that we're about to see take place in this chapter is odd to us. It seems strange to us. I've never taught on this before, but this is how legally binding covenants were made back in that day. So the Lord said to Abram, bring me a heifer, a goat, and a ram, each 3 years old, along with a dove and a young pigeon. Abram brought all these to him, cut them in two, and arranged the halves opposite each other. The birds, however, he did not cut in half. Now, I know that's a little more graphic than some of us may be comfortable with, but this is how covenants, binding contracts were made. He brought the heifer, he brought the goat, he brought the ram, cut them in half, and set each half on opposite sides of each other. The birds of prey came down on the carcasses, but Abram drove them away. Now, this is a funny detail. I was standing at the gas station the other day, pumping my gas, and this bird of prey, I don't know if it looked bigger than a crow. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it landed right beside the gas station, and it picked up a piece of meat that was laying there and then just took off. And I'm like, I am so grateful I can go to Arby's for my meat, that I don't have to pick it up off the floor. Well, the birds of prey were trying to get their food, and Abram, he knew the seriousness of this opportunity, and he drove them away. As the sun was setting, Abram fell into a deep sleep, and a thick and dreadful darkness came over him. Now, up until this point, all the promises that God made Abram were up and to the right. They were promises of blessing. There was nothing negative in any of the promises that God had made Abram. And now God is about to reveal a few of the things that Abram wished, I'm certain, were not part of this promise. As God lets Abram know what's ahead for his descendants, he says, "Then the Lord said to him, 'Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants, your offspring, your heirs will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there.'" Now, we know what that's referring to. We've seen the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston. We know that the children of Israel were in bondage in Egypt for 400 years, and then God set them free. But Abram hadn't seen this movie yet, and so he did not know this. This is the first God is making this proclamation to him. Verse 14, "But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the 4th generation, your descendants will come back here." He's saying, right now, Abram, you are in the land of Canaan. You are standing in the promised land that your descendants will inherit, but it won't happen until after they've been enslaved for 400 years. And then I will bring them back to this land. Then he said, "For the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. When the sun had set and darkness had fallen." Now, this is where the covenant gets made. This is where the promise gets completed. What usually happens when a covenant in that day was made is both parties entering into the covenant would walk through between the pieces of the animals that had been slain, walked through the middle of them together. However, this time, only God is the one who goes through. It's quite a different promise. It says, "When the sun had set and darkness had fallen, a smoking fire pot with a blazing torch appeared." Now, this is representing God's presence here. "And passed between the pieces." That's it. Abram didn't pass through the piece to seal his side of the deal. God alone made this covenant and declared, "I will keep my promise to you. You never have to worry if I will break it. I will be faithful even if you are not faithful." On that day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram and said, "To your descendants I give this land, from the Wadi of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates, the land of the Kenizzites, Cadmonites, Hittites, Perizzites, Rephaites, Amorites, Canaanites, Girgashites, and Jebusites." He's going to give them the land that all the ites live in. There may even be some termites living in there. I don't know, but God's going to give them this land. God made the covenant. Only God passed between the pieces. "May it be to me," the covenant, when they walk through the pieces, what they're declaring is, "May it be to me as it is for these animals if I don't keep this covenant." But God is declaring, "I am different in that I am making this covenant and I am going to keep it regardless of you." What I want to drive home in the first half of this message is that God is faithful in our failures. God is faithful even when we struggle to trust. God is faithful even when we fail, God is always faithful. I want to pause and engage with this video that reminds us of that, reminds us of God's unchanging faithfulness. Let's enjoy this video together.
God's faithfulness is steadfast and unwavering, even in the midst of our doubts and struggles. He keeps his promises, and he never fails us. Throughout history, he has proven himself faithful time and again. From his covenant with Abraham to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Let us trust in his faithfulness, even when we don't understand his ways or timing, because we can take comfort in the knowledge that he is always with us, guiding us and working all things together for our good. So let's praise God for his unchanging faithfulness.
Well, I hope that video was helpful for you, just to be willing to trust in God's faithfulness. When we finished filming in front of the Christmas tree, I wondered where we were going to film next, and then I looked outside and I caught a glimpse of the first snowflakes that we've had yet this fall, this winter. It's not winter yet. It's only November 21st when we're filming. Now, if we lived up near Seven Springs, we'd probably get a half a foot or so of snow, or a foot, I don't know. But we're getting flurries right now and wanted to share that with you. So I threw my jacket on, we opened the front doors of the church, and I'm filming outside because, as you know, I love the snow. Well, hey, this sermon is just simply called Real-Time Failure. Last week, we called the message Real-Time Trust, and we talked about trusting God in real time. Well, today, the last passage I want to look at, the story of Abram's life that I want to look at, reveals just real-time failure. And yet, in that failure, we see God's faithfulness demonstrated. Now, there's this verse in Proverbs that comes to mind every time I read this passage, and every time I choose to go my own way and make my own decision and ignore what God tells me. And it's Proverbs 14:12, and in the English Standard Version, it just simply says, "There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death." There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. I want to ask you to let that verse kind of penetrate your soul and hang out. And whenever you're certain and confident that you're making a wise decision, I want to invite you to allow this verse to come to the surface. There is a way that seems right to a man, but its end leads to death. So I always, when making a big decision where I want the wisest possible choice, and I run it past a few trusted friends to say, hey, here's what I'm thinking. Now, I said I always do this. That's what I'd like to be true about me. More often than I'd like to admit, I fail in this area. And we're about to see a major failure in the lives of Abram and Sarai that has lasting consequences to our world even yet today, because this way seemed so right to someone. Genesis chapter 16, verses 1 through 16 go like this. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. So we've had this whole story from Abram's perspective, but not from Sarai's perspective. Now we get to see her take on it. But she had an Egyptian slave named Hagar. So she said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." Now, Sarai's plan made great sense to her. Like, yeah, this seems to make sense. This way seems to make sense to me. And Abraham, he's not going to argue. He's like, okay, sounds kind of strange. I hadn't really seen this one coming, but hey, far be it from me to resist your great plan, so okay. Abram agreed to what Sarai said. So after Abram had been living in Canaan 10 years, Sarai, his wife, took her Egyptian slave Hagar and gave her to her husband to be his wife. He slept with Hagar and she conceived. When she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Then Sarai said to Abram, "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now she knows she is pregnant. She despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. Your slave, may the Lord judge between you and me." Just like Abram's getting the blame for Sarai's bad idea, and Abram just went along with it. Well, this is an epic failure on both of their parts. It was a bad idea. They didn't seek the Lord. They didn't seek wise counsel. Abram went along with it because in the moment it sounded good to him. It was a really bad idea. It was a way that seemed right to them, but the end is the way to death. Abram says to Sarai, "Your slave is in your hands." I want to point out that our lack of trust has consequences that we can't control. Are determined and resolved to make our own way, to choose our own path, to go our way, not yielded to the Lord, there are consequences to that. "Your slave is in your hands," Abram said. "Do with her whatever you think best." Then Sarai mistreated Hagar, so she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found Hagar near a spring in the desert. It was the spring that is beside the road to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" "I'm running away from my mistress Sarai," she answered. Then the angel of the Lord told her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her." The angel added, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." Sound familiar? The angel of the Lord also said to her, "You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son." Sorry about that. "Will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery." But then listen to this pronouncement of what Ishmael's life will be like. "He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." I just want to point out that our lack of trust, it doesn't just affect us. Our lack of trust hurts others as well. We see Ishmael's future being described by the angel of the Lord as one of hostility and tension between him and everyone. And this is a direct result of Abram's and Sarai's lack of trust of God, that God will do what he said he would do, and they go their own way and try to figure it out on their own. Our lack of trust hurts others. She gave this name to the Lord who spoke to her. "You are the God who sees me." I love this. Even in Hagar's distress and aloneness, the Lord comes to her and sees her and protects her and blesses her. I have now seen the one who sees me, she said. That is why the well is called Bir Lahai Roy. It is still there between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son she had borne him. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore him Ishmael. Now, the amazing thing is that God is the faithful one through all of Abram's mishaps. God is faithful in our failures. And so I want to invite you to lean into the trustworthiness of God. Do not lean on your own understanding, on the ways that seem to make so much sense to you without seeking God, without seeking wise counsel. And I want you to know that God is faithful, yet in our failures, even in our failures. And God will honor his covenant to Abram, even when Abram doesn't believe it to be so. And next week, we will look at the fulfillment of this covenant and promise to have an heir with him and Sarai, with Abram and Sarai. May God's call on your life to trust, may you lean into it, even in the uncertainty, even in the not having it all figured out. May you respond to God's call to trust. God bless you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in with us. And my hands are freezing, so I'm going to go inside now. Love you all. See you next week.